Romancing SaGa 2 Revenge of the Seven on Nintendo Switch offers RPG fans a chance to experience a classic that was once exclusive to Japan. Now, having never played the original, I came into this with fresh eyes, really curious to see if this remake could live up to its lofty reputation. Now, if you do enjoy this review today, do me a favour, subscribe, and let's get into it. In Romancing SaGa 2 Revenge of the Seven, you take on the role of the Emperor of Avalon, a kingdom that is in turmoil as an ancient evil has returned. Now, centuries ago, there were 7 heroes. They saved the world from destruction, but their power, it eventually corrupted them, transforming them into these dangerous villains. Now it's up to you to lead a lineage of rulers across multiple generations, confronting these 7 heroes as they bring chaos to the world. Now, the game's multi-generational storyline, it's a standout feature. It allows you to pass on your legacy through heirs, with each generation facing unique challenges, while of course the ultimate goal remains the same, to defeat these corrupted heroes. Just really enjoyed the mix here of personal and epic scale as you navigate everything from expanding cities to managing political intrigues while watching your empire grow over centuries. However, I will say I did find the pacing slow at times. There were stretches where it felt like hours passed without any significant story progression, and those lulls definitely break the momentum. This seems to stem from the game's non-linear design, so it's something you'll need to be prepared for. That said, when the story does move forward, I had a blast as the stakes grew with each new generation. Romancing SaGa 2 Revenge of the Seven is a turn-based RPG with a non-linear structure, letting you tackle missions in any order that you choose. Now, some of these quests even span multiple generations of rulers. So for example, a mermaid mission, I needed a male emperor, but I was playing as a female character at the time, so I had to return years later with a different ruler to complete it. This non-linear design, it gives you freedom in shaping your playthrough, from managing your kingdom's growth to deciding which areas to explore. Now, when it comes to exploration, you fast travel via a world map with towns serving as small hubs, while missions range from linear paths to more complex branching quests. This system offers a lot of flexibility, but it can leave you feeling a bit lost without clear direction at times, especially when you're still getting the hang of the game's mechanics. And boy, are there a lot of mechanics. Right from the start, the game just throws a lot at you. You select a character, but don't get too attached, because soon after, you'll actually start the game as a completely different ruler. And thankfully, each new emperor inherits the progress of their predecessor. You won't be just starting over and over. So that includes abilities, moves, and formations. Rest assured too, your chosen leader will eventually play a role again. Sometimes though, these transitions are driven by story-based time skips, while other times you can manually decide when it's time for a new ruler to take over. The turn-based combat system then is equally complex. You'll frequently need to assemble fresh squads, adjusting your strategy as you promote new leaders. Each character as well gradually learns new moves and formations, adding even more layers of depth. However, there is a limit on how many moves each character can know, so eventually you'll have to make tough choices about what to forget in order to learn something new, a decision I found particularly challenging. Now, on top of that, the game includes an empire building aspect where you'll grind not only for levels, but also for cash to expand your kingdom with new facilities, so think like a forge or a university, and these will all be essential for strengthening that army. Another layer of complexity is that skill inheritance system. Skills you learn as one ruler can be passed down through the generations, meaning the decisions you make early on actually shape the abilities of your future emperors. It means there's weight even in those early moments. This actually ties as well into the game's theme of legacy, where each generation builds on the last, affecting not only your kingdom, but your combat potential as well. Combat itself is a real highlight in Romancing SaGa 2, with squads featuring up to 5 playable characters. Now, I spent a lot of time optimizing formations, classes, which you will unlock with progression and equipment. So for instance, setting up a tank with a strong defensive setup, it can do wonders for protecting those behind them. And your squad isn't just here limited to basic attacks either. You've got specials and magic, but all of these actions, they are governed by a battle point system, which it acts like a stamina gauge. This means you have to manage your actions carefully, as your points only refresh with items or its specific checkpoints. So usually these are going to be found next to save points or before major battles. The combat also then features united attacks where multiple team members join forces for a powerful combo once a meter is filled. These moves pack a punch, both visually and strategically, and it often gives you the edge in tough battles. My favourite combat mechanic though here, it has to be the life point system. It adds a unique layer of risk to the battles. Each character basically has a set number of life points, and if a character is downed too many times, so for example 10 life points means 10 knockouts, they die permanently and they are removed from your party. It is a genuinely tense feature that forces you to be mindful of your decisions in battle. The only thing that could have made this system better, in my opinion, is a stronger focus on individual characters from a narrative perspective, because the story here is more focused on that overarching legacy rather than specific individuals, so I didn't get too attached to any one party member. This all said as well, should someone die on the battlefield, you can recruit new characters from a tavern immediately. It's great for flexibility, but it does reduce the emotional stakes. Still though, the sense that something is truly on the line in each battle, definitely unique from my typical experience with the genre. Another standout aspect of Romancing SaGa 2 then is the exploration. You're not just confined to the battlefield, there's a whole world here to traverse, and it feels very varied. You can sprint and jump, making movement through towns and wild areas surprisingly fun, and it's also of course packed then with people to talk to, secrets to find, and hidden paths to discover. Early on, a big part of the experience will involve expanding your empire by bringing neighboring kingdoms under your control, so you're going to be doing a lot of traveling, and this often means visiting new locations, helping solve their problems. Also, of course, as you do progress, these treks become more challenging. You'll navigate wildlands full of enemies, and some routes may require finding transport, so think a boat or another means of safe passage to distant locations. One of my favourite parts of exploration though, it's the ability to sneak up on enemies on the map. If you approach from behind, you'll get a button prompt to strike first, giving you a strategic advantage in the battle to come. It's a small but satisfying mechanic that makes exploration feel more purposeful. So while the game's complexity is rewarding once it clicks, I've kind of went very high level here, it's not without its downsides. Romancing SaGa 2 can feel overwhelming right from the start. The game doesn't hold your hand much, so learning the mechanics takes time, patience, and honestly a whole lot of reading through tutorials. There's also the issue of grinding between managing your empire, upgrading facilities, and keeping your characters properly equipped. There are moments here where the game can feel a bit grind heavy, especially when expanding your kingdom becomes increasingly expensive. Additionally, the non-linear structure means difficulty spikes can come out of nowhere, and while the game isn't easy to begin with, it does at least offer some difficulty options. Still though, honestly, I was caught off guard by how much damage enemies can deal, and this challenge persists throughout the entire experience. Enemies are leveling alongside you based on story beats, and yeah, they remain serious threats from beginning to end. Overall, once I got over the initial learning curve, I've had a blast with Romancing SaGa 2 from a gameplay perspective. For most players, it will likely take around 40 plus hours to complete. However, due to the open nature of the experience and the choices that are left to players, this could of course vary wildly. The non-linear structure, just combined with the multi-generational storyline, means the game's length is really highly dependent on how you approach it, but regardless, there's a lot of content here to sink your teeth into. Additionally, while I haven't played the original version of the game, I did consult some older guides to see if the remake stays faithful to its roots, and from what I found, many elements such as character locations and quests seem to remain true to the original releases. Every guide I followed aligned perfectly with the game's design here, so I did that for 3 or 4 missions just to get a feel of how truly close is it. Going in, I did have some concerns around the visuals, especially given the epic scope of the game and the large world ahead to explore, but Romancing SaGa 2 really impressed me. I think that's largely due to the fact that each town and mission is its own self-contained location, rather than one big open world that would have really tested the hardware. But what this means is we get a huge amount of variety, and there were genuine moments that stood out to me, from stunning mountaintops to eerie dungeons that must be overcome. Character design then is also a highlight. The real visual treat comes from the friendly NPCs and the squad members you recruit. They're so stylized and distinct, it's easy to really enjoy building your team just from the way they look. The same can be said of the enemies. They're all over the place in terms of design, and often there isn't a consistent theme, honestly, yet somehow it works. So for example, there's one enemy that appears to be an angry strawberry, and in the same battle you might be facing off against a demonic skull or a towering minotaur. It's eccentric, but they look good, they are animated well, and it definitely brings some charm to each encounter. A particular highlight then is the game's united attacks. These are the epic special moves that allow multiple team members to combine their efforts in a devastating attack once a meter is filled. The animations for these are suitably flashy, and they feel incredibly satisfying when pulled off. Now from a technical perspective then, I didn't have too many issues visually. Sure, some locations can lack a little detail here and there, and you will notice occasional pop-in, especially with NPCs that don't have much, value to add. But overall, Romancing SaGa 2 delivers a visually impressive experience with a solid amount of variety and style. When it comes to the audio then, Romancing SaGa 2 really impresses. The sound effects in combat are punchy and satisfying, and the locations, they have just enough ambient noise to make them feel alive. Voice acting is also well done, and while not every conversation is voiced, understandably so given the scope of the game, the main narrative is supported with strong performances, definitely adding weight to those key story beats. Of course then the real standout here is the soundtrack. It's been fully redone and it is incredible. The battle themes in particular, they go hard, they keep things exciting. But if you're a long-time fan looking for a nostalgic hit, do not worry. The original soundtrack is available from the options menu, letting you switch back to the classic tunes. I love seeing this kind of feature in remakes, and I can understand why people consider this soundtrack a classic. It just really helps elevate both the narrative but also the intensity of the experience. Romancing SaGa 2 Revenge of the Seven is an impressively ambitious and deeply rewarding RPG that excels in its multi-generational storyline, complex combat, and non-linear structure. With a wealth of mechanics, strategic depth, and impressive audio-visual presentation, it's a game that offers a lot of content for those willing to invest the time. However, it's not without its challenges. Between the steep learning curve, occasional grinding, and moments where the pacing can slow, it demands patience. But for RPG fans, especially those looking for something different, it's an experience that stands out. It's blending old school charm with modern updates, and yeah, Romancing SaGa 2 successfully brings a classic to the Switch. For me, this is a great 8 out of 10. It's an impressive RPG that isn't afraid to challenge you, and while it may not be for everyone, fans of the genre and those looking for something unique or strategic will find a lot to love here. So let me know in the comments if you maybe played Romancing SaGa 2 before. Will this be your first time like me? And will you be jumping in? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts. Then if you did enjoy the video, do me a favor and subscribe. It helps out the channel a huge amount. All right, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks all.